And I like you guys' feedback. So if you guys like this format after we're done, let me know on Twitter or let us know in the YouTube comments. Also, like this video and subscribe to the YouTube channel. So we're going to be using some of the tools on the Awesemo website, in particular the top stacks tool, to make some stacks using Fantasy Cruncher. We're going to put some inputs in there and we're going to build some lineups. We're going to see what comes out using some of the stack parameters we set. And then Gundacker and I are going to react to some of the players that Fantasy Cruncher spits out for us. So if you guys like that, once again, let me know on Twitter. Let us know on YouTube. But first, Gundacker, how you doing?
Happy Friday. Are we mic'd up or are we getting trolled in chat? Yeah, I'm ready for week 9. Hopefully every game will be a 75-point total like last night's Jets Colts game. But no, not a lot of high game totals, but a couple of really juicy team totals. So I'm sure we'll identify and isolate a few of the top ones and make some stacks here. And I like this. I like the concept of this video. So hopefully the viewers will like it as well, because it's easy to say what players you like week to week, but putting them into a correlated lineup while still filling in the pieces is a lot easier said than done. So hopefully we can help a couple people out in their lineup construction approach this weekend.
Yeah, and then once again, this is something that is a part of my process, and I think that this will maybe help some people see how I go about building my lineups, and maybe how Gundacker builds some of his lineups, and also how I use Fantasy Cruncher. So starting right off with DraftKings. So here's we've got a DraftKings stack that we want to make. We have a FanDuel stack, and then we're going to make a Contrarian stack also. We're going to put a poll up in the YouTube chat with a few different teams for you guys to select. You could vote on and tell us which team you want to see us make stacks of. But starting with DraftKings, the number one overall stack that we have on the slate for DK purposes in the top stacks tool over at Awesemo.com is the Buffalo Bills this week. We have Josh Allen projected for 14.9% ownership, and we have the team projected with a 21.3% chance to be the top overall scoring team on the slate. So that makes them one of the more positively leveraged team with also a pretty reasonable chance to be the top scoring team. So right away, we're just going to go into some of the advanced options and Fantasy Cruncher, and we'll make some stacks there. But I also want to ask you, Gundacker, we're talking about Josh Allen, this Bills offense. How do you like approaching them this week in terms of how many pass catchers do you think we should be pairing with Josh Allen this week?
I'd probably lean on 2. Obviously, Stephon Diggs would probably be the first guy we go to. I think past that, we start flipping the coin between maybe Emmanuel Sanders, and if Cole Beasley plays, he would be in the mix as well. It is a little bit easier to feel comfortable because Dawson Knox has missed some time. He was a guy I did handcuff to Josh Allen quite a bit, but with him out of the mix, it'll be Diggs, and then I think it's going to come down to either Sanders and Beasley if he can go. He didn't practice yesterday. And I guess Gabriel Davis would be next man up. So I would definitely like to have 2, but it would be Stephon Diggs, and past that, I'm a little bit more murky. But I guess Emmanuel Sanders would be the 2A.
All right, and by the way, Chris, if you go take the running back out of the stack, just make it so it's wide receiver, tight end, and then create the rule. And then we're just going to lock in Josh Allen. So if you go into the quarterbacks page, where on the projections, and then just go to Josh Allen, click the lock button, and then we're going to also, one other thing to consider, the Bills are going up against the Jacksonville Jaguars this week. So one thing that I'll do oftentimes when I build my lineups, if it's a pretty crappy team that they're going up against, is I won't necessarily always force a run back option, but I'll go make groups, which that would be a little time consuming. So we won't do that now, but I might make groups and then just boost the projections of players on Jacksonville in lineups that they appear with Josh Allen. But we don't have to do that now, Chris, because that would take a little while to set up. So I'll just ask, do you want to force us to bring a run back for any Jacksonville players in our Buffalo stacks here, Gundacker?
Nah, I'm not going to force it. If we do 2 Bills, I wouldn't force it here. Like you said, that's a team that I would believe that could shoot out a little bit more. I don't really see that here. Marvin Jones would be the only guy I would lean on if I did do that anyway, and I think he'll just fall naturally in lineups based on his projection. So I'm not going to force the run back.
All right, so Chris, crunch the lineups, and we'll see which players end up populating here in these lineups with Josh Allen, and obviously Josh Allen being there 100%. And I'm trying to make out on my screen what some of the players' exposures are coming up as here. And I'm going to be doing this along on my computer as well, and just running some crunches to see about get an idea for what some of the things would be coming up in some of my numbers as well. But one thing that stands out there, so we've got Josh Allen, and we've got Tommy Sweeney is actually coming up as the number one stack option with him, which I could see why that makes sense, because Tommy Sweeney is very cheap tight end. Dawson Knox missed last week. He's going to be out again this week. And Tommy Sweeney, it's not that he had a massive fantasy game last week, but tight end is a fairly difficult position to fill at times. Three receptions on 4 targets last week for 30 yards. Just because he's so cheap, and there is, a fairly expensive Bills offense here that we need to find salary somewhere. Does it make sense to you how often the Tommy Sweeney's popping up in these stacks?
Yes, but I don't like these. There's a couple of lineups that are showing like Sweeney in the flex. I probably wouldn't go too tight end if I'm going to play Sweeney, just because I don't think his floor is high enough to justify that. But if he's the second option, obviously my eyes are just enamored with Stefon Diggs as the pure handcuff here. But I'll get to some of the tight end. We have seen Josh Allen use his tight end in the last 2 seasons. So I want some Sweeney, but I definitely would probably tighten things up to not have Sweeney in the flex, just because I don't want to burn that spot for a flimsy tight end.
Yeah, I feel you there. And in terms of Stefon Diggs, we're still getting to him in a lot of these stacks, but we actually are getting to even more of Cole Beasley as a stack option here with Josh Allen, which I actually think could make for an interesting leverage play. If you look right now at the ownership projections we have for the Buffalo wide receivers, Stefon Diggs is projected to be one of the most popular plays over on DraftKings this week. He's projected for 15.7% ownership. The only players on DK projected for more ownership this weekend, it is Alvin Kamara, Ezekiel Elliott, and Brandon Cooks. Then we've got Stefon Diggs after that. So with Cole Beasley in some of these stacks, he's projected for less than 10% ownership. He's cheap. Obviously, he has not produced nearly as well as Stefon Diggs over the last couple of seasons, but we have seen an uptick in targets for Cole Beasley after a little bit of slow starts of the year. So last couple of weeks, 13 targets for Cole Beasley. He caught 10 of those for 110 yards. The week before, 9 targets, caught 7 of them for 88 yards. Just the fact that we're seeing Cole Beasley pop up this often in our stacks here as at 5,400, I think he does make for a good leverage play off of Stefon Diggs. I know you like Diggs, but do you like that we're getting to some lineups here that are including Beasley as opposed to Diggs?
I mean, if Beasley ends up, active and full go, yeah, I'm fine with getting to him. I will be, we'll be watching that news up until lock. I do think he's usually the second guy I get to most often behind Diggs. Emmanuel Sanders will have a case as well, but yeah, the last couple of seasons I've liked some of these errant big games out of Beasley, so I don't hate it. 70% maybe a little bullish, but I personally would like to have Diggs as my number one exposed handcuffed to Josh Allen, but Beasley and Sanders are right there for the second favorite option for me.
Yeah, and then some of the other players that are appearing pretty often in some of these stacks, we've got a lot of pay up options actually at running back: Ezekiel Elliott, Nick Chubb, Austin Eckler. Do you think it makes sense to you when we're just looking at that with some of these cheaper wide receivers, at least in these stacks that are popping up, getting to Cole Beasley, getting to Tommy Sweeney, that we end up paying up for running back? So would it then be your preference maybe go a little bit cheaper at running back to prioritize Stefon Diggs?
Yeah, you would have to compensate for that by increasing the salary to Diggs to get to some of these mid-tier running backs. I don't hate the concept here, though. As you said, Stephon Diggs being one of the higher owned, if it is just a wonky week where Allen throws 3 touchdowns and a lot of them are just secondary receiving options, you still kind of get exposure to the stack, and you also kind of fight back against his ownership. But like I said, just historically, we know Diggs is likely to see close to double-digit targets on average. So I just feel safer with him. But yeah, if you wanted to deploy some Diggs, or even maybe you skinny stacked a batch of Bill stacks where it's just Allen and Diggs, and you let the rest of the salary kind of fall where it does land. What I would also say is, if Beasley didn't play and you did sign up for some Gabriel Davis, that's a $3,500 receiver that could also help alleviate some of that salary pressure. But looking at the week 9 slate, there's a lot of big spreads. So I do think investing in running backs is definitely not the worst approach to your lineups this weekend. So I don't hate the fact that we are getting to high-end running backs if it is at the cost of maybe not having as much Diggs as we would prefer. But just from a lineup construction standpoint, and I'm always going to prefer Diggs the most in terms of handcuffing to Allen.
Yeah, and then once again, Cole Beasley is officially listed as questionable to play. I'm assuming that he's going to play. If he ultimately gets ruled out, that changes everything in terms of build stacks. Then I think that I wouldn't feel that much different about Diggs, but to your point before, I think we could look at guys like Gabriel Davis in particular as a really good value option who would likely play more of those snaps out of the slot and would be in line for more targets. So that would just be another cheap wide receiver to target in place of Cole Beasley. We could save a couple $1,000s on. One other guy I noticed that's popping up a whole lot here is Hunter Renfrow, which is going to be sensible because of the Raiders wide receiver situation. There's no longer Henry Ruggs on the team. We have to think that ball is going to go somewhere else. And, as is, Hunter Renfrow has been seeing a lot of targets, at least 8 of them in 3 of the last 4 games. So I think that he is somebody that certainly makes sense as a value wide receiver. Anything else you want to add here about the Buffalo Bills? If not, we could head over to FanDuel and make our stacks over there.
No, it's just a weird situation, right? Two touchdown favorites, and we can't, settle confidently on the running back here. We're leaning on Allen. So hopefully if we do skinny stack Allen, he runs one in.
All right, so let's head on over to FanDuel now. And the team that we're going to be stacking over on FanDuel is the Kansas City Chiefs. So if you look at our top stacks tool, we have them with a 10.7% chance to be the top scoring team of the week. We have Patrick Mahomes projected for fairly reasonable ownership, only 7%. I think a lot of people are getting scared off by some of the recent results of the Kansas City Chiefs, but still, this is a team that rates out as the #1 leverage stack on the entire slate over on FanDuel. So that's something I want to build some of our lineups around. Also, if you guys like some of the tools that we're talking about here and you want access to them for yourself, you can sign up for all of the Awesemo Plus tools that we have for an Awesemo Plus weekly pass for $29.95. That'll get you access to all the stuff that we're talking about right here in terms of the projections, ownership projections, boom bust tool, and all of that. Also, if you are new to it, use the promo code NFL Strategy Show. That is all one word, all capital letters, and that gets you 25% off your first week of Awesemo Plus. And also, if you are just looking for an Awesemo Plus NFL package, you get that for as low as $3.95. So stop guessing, start winning, and join Awesemo Plus today. Before we start to build some of these lineups in Fantasy Crunch with the Kansas City Chiefs, I just want to ask you, Gundacker, how concerned are you with the recent play of Patrick Mahomes?
It seems like I don't know, man. Watching some of these plays and some of these turnovers, I do feel like a couple of these plays are him just trying to be Superman, but there's a lot of tip drills not going his way. So it might be just a unfortunate coincidence of him not playing his best, but also getting unlucky with the final trajectory of some of these tip passes out of receivers' hands to defenders' hands. So I'm not that concerned, because if you've watched Patrick Mahomes, he's good, he's talented. You feel like he'll progress or regress to the mean, whichever terminology you prefer to use. So the lower he drops in ownership, the more I'm gonna like it. So if you're saying we get ourselves some potential leverage on a high octane offense like the Chiefs, I'm gonna be there.
Yeah, I mean, this is a team with the Chiefs. And on the other side of the game now, I this is a game that I think we would have thought was going to be some kind of real high scoring shootout just a few days ago. But of course, there's the whole Aaron Rodgers situation, everything going on with there. So I also don't feel like the Packers are a team that we need to bring run back stacks with. Just standpoint, I do not know what to expect from Jordan Love. Do you think that we're going to need run back stacks in Patrick Mahomes lineups here?
I mean, even if you thought yes is the answer, we're dealing with the most expensive pieces of our slate, right? Devontae Adams is more than Tyreek Hill, and Kelsey's already the most expensive tight end. So past Devontae Adams, you weren't going to deal with a high level of confidence on these run backs anyway. So I'm going to say no, but that I think salary pressures that decision more than anything else.
Yeah, I think that's another really sensible way to look at it is when the pricing came out for this week, we were assuming the quarterback of the Green Bay Packers was going to be Aaron Rodgers. That is no longer the case. It is Jordan Love. And so while Jordan Love himself is cheap, the skill position players on the Packers did not see a decrease in salary. So there's still Devontae Adams is super expensive, and we have to expect this is a pretty big downgrade to him. Even somebody like Aaron Jones, maybe the Packers do look to run the ball more often this week without Aaron Rodgers out. A totally reasonable expectation. I don't know how effective the offense is going to be, as bad as the Chiefs' defense has been this year, just because I don't know if Jordan Love is somebody who could really move the ball effectively down the field in the NFL. Maybe he could, maybe he can't, but there's no way to know for sure. So I'm not going to force myself to make run back stacks of the Green Bay Packers either. But now the Chiefs are going to be a fairly expensive team to look at over on FanDuel. Travis Kelce struggled a little bit this year. Maybe we could attribute that to age. He's 32 now. Tyreek Hill has had a little bit of a drop issue. But are you looking to make lineups here where we're going to make one or two pass catchers with Patrick Mahomes?
I think because of price, I would start at one.
Okay.
They're just so expensive.
All right. So we'll do one wide receiver tight end with Patrick Mahomes and create that rule. And we'll go over and lock Patrick Mahomes in at quarterback and run the 50 lineups in Fantasy Cruncher and see on FanDuel what lineups we're getting built around a Patrick Mahomes and Kansas City Chiefs stack and who the most popular pass catching targets are for him. And one thing that's actually pretty funny that stands out here is this is kind of inadvertently creating onslaught stacks for the Chiefs because we're still getting to a lot of the Chiefs defense in these stacks when we're not forcing a run back, which I mean, only 3,300 for the Kansas City Chiefs against the Green Bay Packers on FanDuel. I'm going to ask you, in terms of us getting to the Chiefs defense in lineups that are going to have a lot of the Chiefs passing game, is that at all problematic to you?
No, I don't. I don't think so. I don't put a lot of stock in defense anyway. But if it's going to, I mean, the system's not reading it as a player, right? Like it's just.
No. It's just the reason it's coming up with the Chiefs is because their salary is really cheap and now they project really well with Jordan Love at quarterback. So it's just a function of Travis Kelce's expensive, Patrick Mahomes is expensive, Tyreek Hill is expensive, and we need to save salary somewhere. And that just happens to be with what is coincidentally the Chiefs defense, which is the best currently projected points per dollar value defense. But now looking at some of these wide receiver, tight end pass catching combinations, we are getting to Tyreek Hill a lot more than Travis Kelce in our fantasy cruncher builds here. And, you know, Kelce's had his struggles this year, the 7,800 price tag. It's come down a little bit, but it's not some kind of crazy discount considering last year Travis Kelce was a guy 20 plus fantasy points basically every single week. Recent games for Kelce, the targets are there, the production is not. The last time Travis Kelce had over 20 fantasy points was week 2 against the Baltimore Ravens. So as far as these high-end receivers go, Fantasy Cruncher is giving us more of Tyreek Hill at wide receiver than Travis Kelce at tight end. Is that also how you want to go about approaching your Kansas City lineups?
Yeah, that was my first knee-jerk reactions to get to Tyreek over Kelce first. Obviously, if we think Mahomes is going to progress back to greatness, Kelce is going to have to be part of that. So I would make sure I don't feel like I'm underweight or I don't have enough exposure to Kelce to feel satisfied in my lineups, but I'm prioritizing Tyreek Hill over Kelce for sure.
Also, Chris, I just realized you have the wrong slate selected in the top right. So we're getting players from the primetime games. So just go to the Sunday slate and then rerun the lineups because We've got Cooper Cup showing up. It would be cool to get to a lot of Cooper Cup too in those lineups. It'd be a good way to make lineups that nobody else is making for the main slate. But yeah, so let's rerun those and see what comes up instead. And you could see some of the players that are populating here, a lot of the same as some of those options we're getting to over on DraftKings. Hunter Renfrow being a prime one who we already talked about. Darren Waller, I do think he makes a whole lot of sense on the FanDuel slate and the DraftKings slate for that matter, for the same reasons that we like Hunter Renfrow, just the extra targets to go around. And this is a spot where if you look at some of the options, particularly running back here with Patrick Mahomes at quarterback and some more cheap running backs being prioritized because of the expense, because of the high cost tag on these Kansas City Chiefs. So we're getting to running backs like Devontae Booker is popping up here, Myles Gaskin. So some names that I don't know that we would necessarily normally get to a lot of. Is seeing this at all anything that would deter you from really wanting to get to a lot of Chiefs stacks when you see that we're getting to a lot of like Devontae Booker and Myles Gaskin?
No, I think you definitely would have to grow an attachment to at least one or two cheap guys. I definitely, in my crunch on my end too, it feels like on both sides I might get to way more Myles Gaskin than maybe I thought yesterday. But looking at the matchup, it kind of makes sense. But they do have Tyrod back in the mix, so maybe that game's a little bit more lively. And I'm fine with that. I was even trying to venture into what would it take for Mahomes, Tyreek, and Kelsey lineup with the Chiefs defense. And yeah, guys like Myles Gaskin or guys you're probably gonna end up having to settle on. So I don't hate those guys in theory. You just need the top guys to maybe not drop 30. But I tell you what, Derrick Henry-less football, I guess with CMC coming back, it might be a lateral, but I think it's fine. I think you, especially on FanDuel, you just grab a guy that falls in the end zone once or twice, and I think you can compensate for the spend up at receiver.
All right, so we're going to make our contrarian stack next. If we could pull up the, do we have the results of the poll? Where did that go? The poll results. I don't see it there. So while I'm looking for that, I will point out that the sponsor of today's show is Jock Market. If you guys are not familiar with Jock Market, totally different way to play daily fantasy sports. You've got a stock market, but for athletes. There's an IPO period. You bid on the players, and then you're able to buy and sell players even after the games have already started. So it's a really fun, different approach to daily fantasy sports. They've got an app you could go download in the Google Play Store, the Apple Store. We also have free IPO projections over on Awesemo.com. So if you're looking at the site and you're like, I have no clue how much money is a fair amount to bid on Nikola Jokic, say, in NBA, or Patrick Mahomes this week in NFL DFS, we've got free projections right over on Awesemo.com. And if you're new to the site, use the promo code Awesemo, and that'll get you up to a $50 bonus on your first deposit. All right, so here we've got the second week in a row. The Cincinnati Bengals win the Contrarian stack poll. I'm not mistaken, right? They won last week too, didn't they?
If they didn't, I was on them, and we all lost.
Yeah, it was. I think I remember that the chat also voted last week to have them come up as our Contrarian stack. So, all right, so we are once again going to Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals. And so we'll go over to DraftKings and we'll build the lineups. Good thing is we should have the all the same settings in Fantasy Crunch that we already had for before. But now I'm going to ask you, do you want to make a bring back in this one? Because we haven't done it for the first couple. I think it's about time that maybe we go ahead and force ourselves to get to a bring back option in these stacks. Cincinnati Bengals taking on the Cleveland Browns, and Cleveland Browns, there's no Odell Beckham Jr. in the mix, but maybe that makes the targets a little bit easier to figure out. We know they're going to be a little bit more concentrated. Do you want bring backs in your Cincinnati Bengals stack here?
Yeah, I think the salary necessities drop all the way around, and this game has a lot of pieces you can put together and correlate quite well.
All right, so let's go pretty heavy stacking here. So we go to the rules. Let's make two of wide receiver / tight end for Cincinnati, and create that rule. And then let's go one bring back option. So one wide receiver, tight end, or running back from the other team. And that should get us to some more of the Browns players, potentially Nick Chubb. I'm kind of curious to see who pops up here. And before we run these lineups, what's your guess? Who do you think populates most frequently from the Cleveland Browns and a run back to Bengals stacks. I'm going to say Nick Chubb, although I wouldn't be surprised if it's Jarvis Landry either.
I guess for FanDuel, Nick Chubb makes more sense for the touchdown for the way it's weighted, but Jarvis Landry, his projection might be adjusted going forward after the Odell release. So on PPR, I'd be Landry, but yeah, I think Chubb would get the weight here. I probably expect Chase Higgins to fill up the receiver spots, and then a lot of Chubb in the running back spot.
All right, so running the lineups, and it looks like we are getting to kind of a little bit of a spread here of Cincinnati players. So we're getting to it's primarily Jarvis Landry and Nick Chubb if you look there, and yeah, those are two. I kind of gave you those two options. Which do we think was going to come up more frequently? It ends up about both of them the same. One thing I will say is I do think that running back maybe a little bit more loaded on DraftKings than FanDuel is this week, but Jarvis Landry, one of my overall favorite value plays on the week on DraftKings and FanDuel as well, but more so on DK just because of the PPR bonus. Once again, no Odell Beckham Jr. in the mix for Cleveland. That's also a headache that's potentially out of the locker room. That seems like it's been an ongoing issue for them. We haven't seen a whole bunch of Jarvis Landry this year. He's only played in 4 games, but the last 2 he's been active, 10 targets, 8 targets. So I'm expecting him to get a pretty healthy workload here. And then in terms of the pass catchers for the Cincinnati Bengals, a lot of T. Higgins, a lot of Tyler Boyd, a lot of Jamar Chase. Of those 3 guys, who is your favorite option from the Bengals to pair with Joe Burrow this week?
Man, I love Chase for upside, but I think this $1,300 discount to T. Higgins's volume has been fine as well. So I would imagine Higgins is the most for me, with Chase is close to it. And I probably have Boyd as the bottom of the 3, but man, these are 3 of my favorite receivers and to stack in all of football. But I'm gonna go Higgins 1, Chase 2, Boyd 3.
I dig it. And here's also what I dig about it. If you go to our boom bust tool at Awesemo as well, T. Higgins is one of the more positively leveraged wide receivers on the slate. We have T. Higgins with a 15.4% chance to land the optimal lineup this week. And let's see, how many wide receivers do we have on the main slate with a better chance than Higgins to land in the optimal lineup? I assume it's not many. I think that Higgins is probably right near the top. So I'm going to bring up those numbers, refresh to make sure I have the most recent one. So, all right, wide receivers this week that have the best chance of landing the optimal lineup. Number 1 is Jarvis Landry. Also fits really well into these stacks we're making in terms of a bring back option. Number 2, Hunter Renfrow. 3, Brandon Cooks, 4, T. Higgins. So I just look at some of that data, and I think that is a really strong way to build some GPP lineups. T. Higgins, Jarvis Landry, there's correlation there in the same game. Even in some lineups that, let's say you're making just a Chiefs stack on DraftKings, I'd be making a 2-man stack that has T. Higgins and Jarvis Landry in it just for a little bit of an off-game stack correlation. I like that as well. Anything else that really stands out to you from this Browns-Bengals game that we should be bringing up?
No, I mean, I guess other than everyone will go straight to Jarvis Landry. Maybe we don't forget about Donovan Peoples-Jones, right? Make sure we get a sprinkle of that to maybe make up some of the Odell targets and some of those routes as well. But for the most part, I'm in full agreement. Jarvis Landry is the guy for me, especially in PPR.
Yeah, and then especially just like I said, looking at that data over on the side, I think chat did a good job of who they voted on today, because looking at some of these as we're building the lineups, I also think Cincinnati is the best contrarian stack on the slate. I love getting to Joe Burrow, T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, running it back with Jarvis Landry, a little bit of Nick Chubb in the mix too. I think that is a really good way to go about building tournament lineups. So guys, let us know. This was a different way to approach the lineup building show. We're using some of the tools on the site, looking at the top stacks, incorporating Fantasy Cruncher. Let us know if you like this format. If you have anything that you'd like us to tweak, let me know on Twitter. Let me know on YouTube. Leave a message in the comments, because maybe you have an idea that's better than what I came up with. Thank you guys very much for watching. And on the way out, do us a favor, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and good luck this weekend.